to the, where are we going, Bill? Tree of Knowledge in Wickham.
It doesn't matter what your colour, as long as you are true colour. Are you the one that's gonna stand up and be counted? Stand up and be counted. Black fella, white fella.
Youth work, and the subject is sociology, and we wanted to do something where we actually connect with the space and local spaces, so we're not just learning from textbooks. So Gioni is the archivist at the University of Newcastle. Ground floor of the Orkney Library at the university, you'll find Gioni and lots of other amazing people with access to lots of knowledge. Just before we start today and I hand over to Gioni, I'd just like to acknowledge on behalf of TAFE students and TAFE as an organisation that we're meeting on the traditional country of the Awabakal and Warramai peoples, and we pay respect to their elders past and present.
I was asked to just give you a bit of an understanding about what I understand about this neck of the woods from an Aboriginal history perspective. All I can say is that that story is still unfolding as we learn about it. So for us it's a constant source of revelation, this whole area. Archivist, I deal with historical records, and you might think, okay, well, big deal. But historical records basically contain evidence of things that occurred. It doesn't mean it's gospel. You've really got to question stuff, and the questioning of history is really important, I think. At the moment, I can't even see Nobbies.
No.
Nobbies is over there somewhere. I can't see the ancient corroboree ground that used to be here, but there was one in that vicinity over there. Everything in our environment is full of boxes and cars. Everything is basically boxed up and divided up into squares. That's what our culture does. And about 200 years ago, when we all arrived here in the form of the British and various migrant cultures, we transformed the environment that had been at work for maybe hundreds, if not thousands of years. So we're talking about a culture that's been here for quite a long time, and then we just arrived 200 years and we're completely transformed it. Completely transformed it. Those people and the descendants of those people are still with us, and it's part of our job, I guess, at the university to just keep bringing up information about this and almost rewriting history. And the reason why we have to rewrite it is because it's wrong. The way that we've seen history in the past is absolutely wrong. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, we used to watch shows on the TV about the arrival of Captain Cook to Australia. And that arrival was always denoted by a couple of Aborigines on the beach there as Captain Cook arrived in Botany Bay, and he'd be handing over trinkets to the Aboriginal people, and voiceover would say something along the lines of, here is Captain Cook exchanging a couple of trinkets in exchange for Australia. All right? And I would just think, oh yeah, that's fair enough, yep. Some Europeans just arrived, and you hand over some stuff, and then the country's yours. And then I started to think about myself, how many parties have you gone to where you've taken along a box of chocolates, or maybe you've taken along a wine bottle or something like that, and the person doesn't give you their house or their lease or their car because you've brought around a gift. It's just a gift that you've brought around to say thank you, welcome, okay, I accept the gift, come in and have something to eat. Now, why is it that we can understand that in our setting but not understanding it in an Aboriginal setting? Why does giving an Aboriginal a gift mean that we're going to have to take over their entire world? But that's what we grew up understanding, okay? So for us it's been really an interesting, for me personally, it's been a very interesting learning curve. And being at the university and having access to computers and scanners and ancient stuff, my job has basically been trying to transform all this stuff that's in a variety of different formats. It could be a painting, it could be a bit of text, it could be a journal, it could be handwriting, into something that we can absorb. So what I did today is I basically printed out this site that we put together a few years ago that was sparked off by this painting. So I don't know how many of you have seen this painting. It's a very dark painting. Have you seen that painting at all? I actually made a nuisance of myself at the State Library trying to get as high a resolution of that painting as possible. It's of a corroboree scene, it's very dark. You can see Nobby's in the background over here when it was still an island. So Nobby's wasn't always connected to the mainland, it was an island. And there was a story connected with that island about a giant kangaroo. But you'll notice that even stories like that have been sort of taken as being established, everything's being questioned at the moment, okay? And it's part of your generation and your work to question everything, okay? And to test it, to make sure that the evidence stacks up and to make sure that it's true, all right? How do we know what true is? We don't know. I mean, we're living in the era of Trump and we're in post-truth now. We're in an era of lies, and I don't know if you watched Four Corners last night, but we create rubbish like there's no tomorrow, okay? The amount of junk that we've created is just incredible. And we're just stockpiling a lot of it, right? And every time I see something like that and I think of Aboriginal culture, I think, my God, Aborigines didn't create this amount of junk at all. Because in their sort of way of looking at things, they had to hand over the country, their land, they had to look after it. Every single one of you would have been responsible for something in that environment. The other thing that I like doing is being able to superimpose maps at a particular time on top of other maps, or on top of Google Earth. So you're all familiar with Google Earth? Well, with Google Earth we can get an ancient map that comes from 1897 and we can get a scan of it and we can put it on top of Google Earth and find out where things used to lie that aren't there anymore, or they've disappeared. Now with the corroboree ground, that was a real challenge. So you might have something like that. That's an 1897 map of the area of Wickham down there, near Holland Street. That's where Mrs. Farnham used to live, and Mrs. Farnham ended up becoming the informant when she was 96 or something, or was interviewed by the Newcastle Herald and told, yeah, can you tell us all about the times, 100 years ago when you were growing up as a little girl? And she told them, massive corroboree ground there, that they'd had the corroboree because, and the reason why they had the corroboree, she said, was because a little pickaninny had been born. A little girl had been born, and they decided to have this gigantic big corroboree. A gathering of Aboriginal tribes from different areas. And usually there are things that happen at those things, like there's initiation. That's what's going on in this painting, by the way. There's a whole lot of situations going on in this painting. I haven't got it big enough. I'd love to project it on the side of a building for you.
When white people came, they presumed that everything was better. We think about youth work today, there's still lots of evidence, the Northern Territory intervention and many other examples. If we walk in and we say, we think we've got a better way. When you think back to those practices, they're not. They had practices which were, if you like, managing youth transitions. Yeah. So you think about the transition from a child to a youth and the way that's handled in youth work today. We sometimes don't acknowledge that traditional societies have been doing that for centuries, yet we throw everything away. So it's something we should reflect upon in our work as youth workers. What elements of culture and Aboriginal culture can we acknowledge and bring into our work with young people?
The reason why they've got a corroboree is because they didn't want inbreeding to happen. So each particular clan or tribe had a particular totem animal, which was like a designated, they used to call it the moiety, but it's a way of knowing that, if you're a wallaby girl and you're a wallaby boy, then the pair of you shouldn't marry because you're from the same line. Okay, but if you're a wallaby girl and you're a kangaroo boy or something, or a wombat boy or something, then you could. So it was a way of, now that's something that the kings and queens of Europe couldn't work out. And there's been two really wonderful books that come out recently. One by Bill Gamage, called The Biggest Estate on Earth, and another one has been Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu, that are basically trying to have a think about what was actually going on here before us Europeans arrived and decided to change the entire game. So let's say, the way I see it is that there was a lovely game going on here, like a game of chess, and we walk on thinking, oh, we've got checkers, it's much better, and we just go and start playing checkers over the top of the same board. So that's sort of, we've played another game here, not really understanding the country very well, and so we've got big problems that Aboriginal people didn't have, right? Things like floods, things like bushfires are problems that we've created for ourselves because we don't understand the way the landscape works we don't understand how to use it properly. We don't understand how to make it live for us in a sustainable fashion. They did. They made quite a success of it. Okay? So years ago, when we found a whole bunch of Aboriginal artefacts down there, if you have a look at the Herald columns, you'll see the trolls just invade the comment space, anonymous people that start trolling around, and they go, oh, well, you know, obviously because they're interested in developing the site more so than the cultural heritage. They say, well, what are you getting so fixated about a bunch of rocks for? What do those rocks signify? To me, they sort of signify a way of survival. So what's happened now? Well, we're in the 21st century now, and we've got some problems with our way of looking at things. We create nothing but trash. We trash our people, and we've got big problems with survival, because none of us, if I said to you, okay, we're going to survive for another 50,000 years, you probably laugh. So something has to be done. If we think it's worth it, all right, this whole lovely little human race that we've been doing for the last million years, then it's up to our generations to really find another way of making it work.
And so, if I can just cut in there, Jenny, so thinking about how we practice youth work and how we work with communities, what might have been some of the practices that took place in terms of a corroboree, in terms of sharing and connection and recognising that people came from different places but respected those places, is something we need to consider in our work, because society's got to a point where it's almost that people are considered as surplus. And there's a sociologist called Bauman, who died recently, who wrote about the whole nonsense of this idea that we've created a society in which people can be surplus and placed on the dole or not considered worthwhile. The big question as youth workers maybe, and please comment or add to this if you like, how do we create societies in which everyone is worthwhile and there's meaning for everybody? And how can we use local spaces to do that in? What might a modern day corroboree look like?
White fella, yellow fella, baby fella, it doesn't matter what your color, as long as you are blue fella. Are you the one that's gonna stand up and be counted? Stand up and be counted.
Out here nothing changes, not in a hurry anyway. We're talking about a chosen place. You wanna sell it